Hey, I'm Sanjana with the Arize team. Today I'm going to be doing a quick demo on how to trace and evaluate your master agents with Arize AX. Everything I'm going to be showing today also applies to Arize Phoenix, but we're just going to stick to Arize for this demo. We have this new exporter over here that sends your tracing data over to Arize and it visualizes your master agents really easily. And once we have that data, I'm going to show you how we can set up evaluations in the Arize UI to evaluate past runs of your agent and even set up evaluations for any future runs of your agent. So the docs down here give you a basic setup for how to configure this exporter, and I've also done that in my code over here. Because I have all of this configured, I went ahead and started to run the master dev server, and from there, let's start testing out the agent and seeing what traces can look like. So now we're in the master studio, and you can see my agent is over here. It's a movie recommendation agent. So if we click into it, we can see that we have access to 3 tools that I defined. First is a tool that selects a bunch of movies. The next is a tool that reviews those movies. And then finally, we have a tool that creates previews or summaries for those movies. The idea is we want to be able to ask the agent anything like, give me a comedy movie to watch tonight, and it will spit out recent movies, rank them, and review them for you. So it's just easier for you to pick what you want to see. And that's what this system prompt kind of defines here. It defines the tools for the agent, and it gives the agent a suggested workflow on how to use the tools and deliver the best possible responses. So let's just try exactly this out. Give me a comedy movie to watch. I'm gonna press enter on that. So what we can see happened is that the movie selector tool was called, and then the review tool was called, and then a bunch of previews were created. And then our final output is what we see here is a couple of movie recommendations, their ratings, and a summary. So it's just easier for me to now figure out what I'm gonna go see. Now, if we hop over to Arize, in this project that I defined, we see the entire run of our agent. So every single step the agent took, every LLM call that was made, and every tool call that was executed to bring us to that final answer that we saw. So we can just like click into each one of these. We see the system prompt, this user prompt that I passed in, and then again, this was the final answer. But as we go into each of these steps, like we have step 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on, we can see how exactly that final answer was created. I'm just gonna click through a couple more of these. So this was the preview summarizer tool. It took in the movie, spit out a summary, and it used LLM calls to make that happen. Now, as we can see, there's a lot of different steps that were taken here. We have a ton of spans for that one execution of the agent. And it's not realistic for me to go through every single one of these, click through all the attributes, and understand what went well and what went wrong, which is why evaluations are really important. So I'm going to come over here and set up a new eval task, and I'm going to use LLM as a judge in this case. I'm going to call this task, I'm going to name the task, and then I'm going to set this to run on new and incoming data. So basically, after we set this up, as we call that agent more times, these evaluations that we define now will automatically run in the background for us. And in addition to our traces, we will see those evaluation scores. For my first evaluation here, I'm going to run a span level evaluation. A span is each of those individual steps that you are seeing in the agent call. This is going to be different from the next evaluation that we do, which is going to be a trace level evaluation that looks at the agent holistically. In this case, I want to really isolate the LLM spans in my agent. This is because the LLM spans are the foundation of the tool calls in the way that I defined this agent. And it's from the LLM that we're getting these movie recommendations and preview summaries and all these reviews. So I want to make sure that I'm getting safe answers returned to my users and that the recommendations for movies aren't toxic or inappropriate in any way. So that's going to be the first evaluator that I define here. So I'm going to go ahead and press add evaluator, and also I filtered out specifically LLM spans because those are the ones that are actually returning this data to me. So I'm going to go ahead and press add evaluator, and I'm just going to call this the safety eval. Arize has a lot of pre-tested LLM as a judge evaluators out of the box. So if I were to click on one of these, you can already see the template here, but I'm going to define my own for this one specifically. So over here is where I would define the scope, and this is going to be span, trace, or session. I already said earlier that I'm going to be focusing on span level evaluations in this case. And now I'm going to add in my safety or toxicity eval template. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and use this preview variables tool to make sure that I'm passing in the right variables and parameters into my prompt template. So maybe let's pick this one over here, this LLM call. We can see that the outputs from the LLM are going to be stored in this variable attributes.output.value. So I'm going to just copy and paste this eval template in that I had already defined before this, and it's going to use that variable that matches up with my LLM spans, so we can make sure that the evaluator actually runs properly. And all this evaluator is saying is that it's checking for the safety and appropriateness of the movie recommendations, and we just have some criteria that we want it to follow to make sure it doesn't contain hate, violence, any dangerous behavior, things like that. And I'm going to define my output labels to be safe and unsafe to match what my evaluator will be returning. And then I can go ahead and press create eval from here, and now we have that safety eval here. I can add as many evaluators as I want here, but for now I'm just going to go ahead and press create task. So this task has now been created, and I'm going to go ahead and make another one for my trace level eval. And the reason I didn't add the trace level evaluator to the previous one was because I want to actually filter for agent spans when I'm going to be using my trace level eval, my Mastra trace eval, and I'm also going to set this to run on new and incoming data. I'm going to go ahead and set this to trace over here. So this is going to make sure that it's pulling traces that have that agent span associated with it. And then I'm going to call this one, in this case, relevance. So I want to make sure that the outputs from the agent are actually matching what the query was, just to make sure that the actual output was relevant to what the user asked. We don't want horror movies to be returned when the user was looking for a rom-com or something to watch. So I'm going to go grab my template really quick So I skipped ahead a little bit and just copy and pasted my template here. It's the same idea as before, where I'm just telling my evaluator what tools we have access to, and I'm just making sure that my variables line up with what's actually going to be in my agent trace. And finally, I just also defined my evaluation labels because in this prompt, I picked good, partial, and bad to be the possible return values. And then I'm going to set create eval, I'm going to do create task. And now what we can do is just go back to this Mastra studio where we were running our agent, and I'm just going to go ahead and call this agent a bunch of times. And then I'll come back and we can see what those evaluations look like in the Arize UI. Okay, so now I'm back and I ran this agent a bunch of times. I asked, like, give me some animated movies, horror films, things like that. And if I go back to Arize, I see all those traces here. And if I were to just click on any one of these, my evaluations were automatically ran because we had set those up prior. These online evaluations run every few minutes. So as you're running your agent, within a few minutes, you'll see these outputs pop up. So for my trace level evaluation that I kind of ran at the top level for the agent, we can see this output was good. We get an explanation, and then you can also see up top the trace evaluation scores that you define. And if I were also just to click into any one of these LLMs, we can see what the safety output looks like and the different scores for that. Another cool feature with this Mastra instrumenter is you also get these agent graphs automatically rendered. So it's just another visual way to understand what paths your agent took. And clicking into each one of these circles also shows you the specific span. Everything that I did here today is easy to set up with Arize AX, and also we could run a similar tracing and evaluation pipeline within Phoenix as well.